In the west of Tibet, at an elevation of 6,638 meters above sea level, rises a mountain that at first glance should not attract any particular attention. Dozens of neighboring peaks in the same region rise considerably higher, and yet this summit, in all its history, has never once been climbed by a human being. This is Mount Kailash, a sacred site venerated simultaneously by four religious traditions: Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and the ancient Tibetan faith of Bon. For more than 1 billion people on the planet, this is not simply a mountain massif, but literally the center of the universe. In 1985, the legendary mountaineer Reinhold Messner, the very man who was the first in history to summit Everest without the use of oxygen cylinders, received official permission to ascend to the top of Kailash. He turned it down. His words became iconic. By conquering this mountain, we would conquer something within the human soul. The mountain has 4 faces, oriented almost precisely toward the cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. Such regular geometry is a great rarity among natural mountain formations, which typically grow in asymmetrical and chaotic shapes. Today we will examine the principal mysteries of this place. The height of Kailash is 6,638 meters. In the Himalayas there are dozens of peaks that surpass it, and Everest is nearly 2 kilometers higher. Yet not one of these taller mountains can boast the status of being unconquered. All were eventually climbed by mountaineers. Kailash stands apart in this regard. In 1926, the Briton Hugh Rutledge examined the northern slope of the mountain and concluded that a climb up it was utterly impossible. In the same decade, Colonel R.C. Wilson studied the southern side and found a route that looked promising. But heavy snowfall and severe weather conditions forced the expedition to abandon their efforts before they had managed to rise above base camp. In 1936, Austrian mountaineer Herbert Tichy was preparing for an ascent. A local lama persuaded him to abandon the idea, declaring that only a person completely free of sin could climb Kailash, and that even the lama himself would sooner prefer to transform into a bird and fly to the summit than to clamber up those icy slopes. In 1983, the Chinese authorities officially prohibited ascents of Kailash, not because the climb is technically impossible, but exclusively out of respect for the mountain's religious status. This prohibition remains in force today. Thus, over the century that has passed since the first attempts to storm the summit, not a single officially confirmed successful ascent has been recorded, neither before the ban was imposed nor after. In this way, a mountain of comparatively modest height became the last major unconquered summit in an entire region where peaks of far greater technical difficulty have been scaled. From whatever side one looks at Kailash, it produces the impression of near-perfect symmetry. 4 clearly defined faces point approximately toward north, south, east, and west, and the sharp summit in its shape resembles a geometric figure. Most mountains in the world form in an entirely chaotic fashion. Uneven weathering, random geological processes, cracks and fault lines create irregular, fractured silhouettes. This is precisely what the peaks neighboring Kailash look like: jagged, uneven, devoid of any system. Kailash itself is composed of dark conglomerate, sedimentary rock resting atop a granite base. Geologists note that the process of this mountain's formation differs from what is typical for the region. The combination of a solid inner core with the layered structure of the conglomerate resulted in erosion proceeding more evenly in all directions, thereby producing an unusually regular form. But even understanding the physical mechanism of this process, researchers acknowledge the degree of Kailash's symmetry sets it apart among thousands of neighboring peaks of the Ganges Range. No other mountain within a radius of hundreds of kilometers possesses such a pronounced 4-faced structure. To the south of Kailash lie 2 lakes, separated by a narrow strip of land only a few kilometers wide. The first is Manasarovar, a freshwater body at an elevation of 4,590 meters, one of the highest freshwater lakes on the planet. Its water is so transparent that pilgrims perform ritual bathing in it, believing that it cleanses the soul. The second lake, Rakshas Tal, lies literally right next door beyond the isthmus. It is saline, its water is undrinkable, life within it is practically absent, and local tradition strictly forbids bathing in it. Two lakes, separated by mere kilometers and fed from the same mountain system, possess fundamentally different water compositions. Rakshas Tal is endorheic. The water in it has no outlet, accumulates, and over millennia has gradually increased its salt concentration. Manasarovar, by contrast, is part of a drainage system that regularly replenishes its water. Local tradition perceives this pair of lakes as a visible embodiment of the balance of opposites, light and shadow, purity and danger, existing side by side at the foot of one and the same mountain. Within a radius of just a few dozen kilometers from Kailash, 4 rivers take their source, then diverge in completely different directions, covering thousands of kilometers. The Indus flows north and west, crossing the entirety of Pakistan and emptying into the Arabian Sea. The Sutlej, a tributary of the Indus, moves through northern India. The Brahmaputra rushes east across all of Tibet, then turns south and passes through India and Bangladesh. The Karnali flows south into Nepal, where it joins the Ganges system. Thus, waters born in a single mountain node ultimately reach 3 different ocean basins: the Arabian Sea, the Indian Ocean through the Ganges Delta, and the Bay of Bengal. Millions of people in 4 countries depend on rivers whose sources lie within 1 day's journey from Kailash. This is precisely why ancient texts called the area around the mountain the axis of the world, long before it was possible to verify the geographical picture from the air or from space. The accuracy of this ancient observation about 4 river systems converging at a single point continues to astound modern geographers. Several hours' drive from Kailash, in one of the driest and most inaccessible parts of the Tibetan plateau, ruins lie hidden. Clay walls, cave chambers carved directly into the rock, the remains of palace buildings atop an erosion cliff approximately 300 meters high. Here once stood the kingdom of Guge, which existed from approximately the 10th century onward. At its height, it controlled vast territories of western Tibet. The capital of the kingdom was literally carved into the body of the cliff. Hundreds of cave chambers were connected by secret passages running from the base of the cliff to the palace at its summit. Inside the surviving temples, one can see wall paintings of astonishing preservation. Despite their age of several hundred years, the bright colors have barely faded, thanks to the exceptionally dry climate of the region. At some point, the kingdom of Guge suddenly and almost entirely emptied out. Historians have yet to reach a consensus on the precise causes of this disappearance, the exodus of the entire population of a kingdom that had flourished for centuries in one of the harshest corners of the planet. Today, Guge is a virtually deserted archaeological site, reached only by the few travelers who make their way to the Kailash region. The ghost city stands amid a lunar landscape of erosion hills, visible from dozens of kilometers away. 65 kilometers to the west of Darchan, on the northern bank of the Sutlej River, there is a place where the earth literally smokes. The cause is not volcanic activity in the conventional sense. These are geothermal springs emerging at the surface amid a completely lifeless, sun-scorched landscape of red and white rock. Tirthapuri is one of the most important stops on the pilgrimage route, traditionally visited after completing the circumambulation of Kailash itself. The springs are surrounded by white calcareous terraces formed over centuries by the deposition of minerals from the hot water. Local tradition connects this place with the meditative practice of one of the key teachers of Tibetan Buddhism from the 8th century, who, according to legend, spent time here in a secluded cave together with his spiritual consort. On the pilgrimage route around the springs there is a remarkable detail. A special opening in the rock where pilgrims blindly insert their hand and draw out 2 stones. If both stones are white, this is considered a good omen. If one is white and the other dark, the sign is neutral. If both stones are dark, the pilgrim is advised to reflect upon their own actions. The springs themselves are weakening over time. According to observations by local residents and travelers, geothermal activity here has noticeably decreased over recent decades. Once there was a fully functioning geyser here, while today the outflow of hot water is far more modest than travelers of the past century described. The standard pilgrimage route around Kailash, the so-called Outer Kora, stretches approximately 52 kilometers and is normally completed in 3 days via the Drolmala Pass at an elevation of 5,630 meters. But there exists a second, far less well-known route, the Inner Kora. By tradition, it may be walked only by those who have already completed the outer circuit at least once. This unwritten rule is passed from generation to generation without any official prohibition, yet is observed by virtually all pilgrims. The Inner Kora passes considerably closer to the mountain itself, through territory known as Nandi Parikrama, named after the sacred bull, the traditional companion of the Hindu deity to whom the mountain is dedicated. Along this route lie the caves of the 7 rishis, a complex of 13 small shrines considered one of the most demanding stretches of the entire pilgrimage circuit in the region. Thin air, great altitude, and steep slopes make the inner route physically more demanding than the outer, despite its shorter length. This is precisely why tradition requires completing the longer but less extreme outer route first. It serves as a kind of readiness test before the far more grueling inner ordeal. Kailash stands in one of the most inaccessible corners of the planet. No simple roads lead here, and obtaining permission to visit is no easy matter. And yet millions of people over millennia have found a way to reach this place. The mountain that no one has ever climbed continues to draw those willing to walk around it.